C19 and FM 88.5 now bring you the Superintendent's Update, a periodic discussion of the Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools merger process. Here now is Media Relations Manager Stephanie Everson with MCS Superintendent Dorsey E. Hopson.
Hello, you're watching the Superintendent's Update. I'm Stephanie Everson with MCS Superintendent Dorsey Hopson, here to talk about the merging of Memphis City and Shelby County Schools. Hello, Superintendent Hopson.
Good afternoon, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. I am so excited about this opportunity to serve.
Yeah, there's so much work to be done.
There is so much work to be done. I want the community to know that it's getting done. It's a long process, but we're getting it done.
All right, that's good to know, I'm glad that you said that. So there's a lot of people that may have seen you during the board meetings on the other side of the table, and now you're right there next to the board members at the front of the table. So give us a little background on who you are and how you went from the general counsel to superintendent.
It's been a fascinating journey. I am a Memphian, lifelong Memphian, born and raised here. Went to Whitehaven High School. They call it the high school, and it's a funny story. Yesterday I was at the Think Show over at Whitehaven, and it just reminded me of the culture of excellence at that school that's been in existence for a long time. They continue to excel academically, on the football field, on the band, in all different areas. So I'm just so excited to be here at this time when they're doing so well. Went to University of Memphis for undergraduate school, then moved to Atlanta for about 14 years. In Atlanta, worked at some big corporate law firms, but most importantly, served as general counsel for two other school districts there, the Atlanta Public Schools, Clayton County Schools. And I think that in that journey, during that time frame, what I was crystal clear on was that I have two passions. One is education, one is the law. And I think that that passion was instilled in me through my mom, through my dad, who are both educators. I have a sister who's an educator as well. So as I continued on the journey, somewhere around April 2008 or so, I learned that the Memphis City Schools was looking for another general counsel and had the opportunity, almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to come home. People say there's no place like home, and they're right.
That's right.
So came back here in June and jumped right into the frying pan. We had a big dispute with the city of Memphis on some city funding issues.
And this was in 2008?
This was in 2008. I think I started June 8th, and we were in court about the second week after I got here.
You hit the ground running.
I hit the ground running. Dr. Cash came in a couple weeks after I did. So just kind of watched the whole reform agenda, the reform work, and work doing legal things with the city, and just kind of all out. It was all out newness here, and really learned a whole lot more about the nuts and bolts of school reform and what truly goes on in the area of education administration during my time as a lawyer. So, you know, the interesting thing is that as a lawyer, you pretty much touch on all the issues that are involved in the school system, whether it's an employee issue, whether it's a special education issue, whether it's a contract issue, you know, whether it's a curriculum issue, whether it's an intellectual property issue. So got a unique opportunity to work on all those different kinds of issues. But, you know, the interesting thing is when you're a lawyer, they call you in, you can give advice and counsel on it. But when you move over to the other seat, you got to act on those recommendations. So as we moved forward, I guess back in January, Dr. Cash and the board decided that Dr. Cash would essentially relinquish the superintendency so he could pursue other options, but also so he could make sure that he continued to advise the district as we move forward with this merger process. And the board saw fit to name me as the superintendent of Memphis City Schools. I mean, it just fills me with pride to know that the school system that raised me, that I've known and loved all my life, I'm going to be the last superintendent of the Memphis City Schools. So it's just been a remarkable journey.
And we are glad to have you.
I am glad to be here.
Right, because you bring a vast knowledge of the legal system, which is needed when you're doing a merger.
Yes.
And your vast knowledge of education
yes.
as a whole. And
yes.
you're from right here.
Yes.
So getting into this merger, what is the official date that we will become one school system?
Well, the board passed a resolution a while back saying that the date the Memphis City Schools will be dissolved will be June 30th, and that kind of lined up with the budget year. Right. So as of June 30th, the Memphis City Schools, as we know it, will cease to exist. But I do want to just point out that doesn't mean the buildings go away. Most importantly, it doesn't mean the students go away. We still have a tremendous obligation to these students, not just the students in Memphis, but the students in all of Shelby County. But I pay particular attention to the students in Memphis City Schools only because they're so fragile. So many of them are
yes.
so fragile. There's so much poverty. There's so much consequences of social ills. And many of those students just have situations and circumstances that make it even more difficult for them to achieve. Doesn't mean they can't achieve. And I do believe that every child can achieve, but you have to recognize that there are so many things that happen. And for example, I was reading over at La Rose Elementary School, and just to fourth graders, just these wonderful, wonderful children. And they had the twinkle in their eye, and you know that those kids can do anything and be anything that they want to be. But you also have to be real and say they have some unique challenges that maybe some of our more affluent students in Memphis and out in Shelby County don't have. And with this whole merger process, if we don't ensure that the kids, particularly the more fragile kids, get what they need to achieve, then it's a shame on all of us.
And so I'm glad you said that, because that leads to the question of many students
yes.
that say, how is this merger going to impact me? How does it impact my classmates? Does it impact my classmates? What could you tell them?
Well, those are excellent questions. I think that not just the students, but the whole community wants to know how this merger is going to affect them. And I think one of the things that I'm proud of is I try to be honest. And I think that there are a lot of questions that aren't exactly all the way answered right now. We're still going through the process. I think that with respect to the day-to-day, if I'm a student and I'm at Arlington right now, or if I'm a student and I'm at Melrose right now, next year when schools open, you can probably still expect to be in the school that you're in now. The reason is I think that the board is committed to not changing attendance zones for a couple years, and that's what drives where kids go to school. Your school administration that you are familiar with, and you know that's still going to be your school administration for the most part. So we don't expect major wholesale changes, particularly next year. And I think that one of the guiding principles to this merger was that we don't want to disrupt students' lives. We don't want to disrupt families' lives. So I think that there's a conscious effort, by the board to make sure that when we start school day one next year, people are going to be as least disruptive or disrupted, as they possibly can be.
And that is a common misconception that was going around and is still going around.
Yes.
Parents think and students think that they go to one school in the city and all of a sudden they're going to be bused to a school way out of their area and vice versa. So we're dispelling that rumor right now.
Not going to happen. I mean, again, one of the guiding principles of the TPC, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later, was that you want to make sure that this does not disrupt the lives of children and families. And I think that is why they called the board early on, and I know the board is totally in support of not, tinkering around with the attendance zones right now. There's just so many unknowns and so many variables. So I think that you got to start this thing by being able to reassure parents and students that their day-to-day lives, remember, we're here for these kids.
Right. And
then from the kids outgrows into the community, we're here for them. And stability is key, particularly with so much uncertainty in other areas.
Right. I'm glad that you said that. And speaking of the TPC, there are a lot of key groups that are working on this merger.
Yes.
And I wanted you to kind of explain and discuss their role. So first off, TPC, Transition Planning Commission.
Yes.
What is and was their role in this merger process?
Well, let me back up a little bit. I think it's just important to put it in context. I can put my lawyer hat on.
Yes, please do.
Back in December 2010, the Memphis City School Board, or what was the Memphis City School Board, voted to transfer the administration of the Memphis City Schools to the Shelby County school system. And essentially what that meant was that the voters in the city of Memphis got a chance to decide whether or not they wanted the Memphis City Schools to continue or whether they wanted to combine with the Shelby County School District. The voters in Memphis voted to merge the two school systems. As a result of that, or after that, the Tennessee State Legislature passed a law which governed the transition, and it basically said that you have to put together, the two school systems need to put together a merger plan over a 3-year period. And in that law, they came up with this concept, well, not this concept, but they said you had to have a transition planning commission. And what they do is just various members of the community come together and make recommendations about how to actually merge these two school systems. I mean, you're talking about, you know, almost $1 billion entity and a $600 million entity with just all kind of different moving parts and bring them together. And, you know, stuff like that happens in corporate America every day, but, you know, this has been noted by the New York Times as the largest school merger in U.S. history. So as a result of all those parts, the Transition Planning Commission came together to make recommendations on how to merge these two school systems.
Okay, and then so when we're at the board meetings and they speak of these recommendations and present them, grouping them, these numbers, that's what they're referring to. The recommendations for the merged school system created by the Transition Planning Commission, which the school board and school staffs are using as guidelines. Correct?
Yes, and just to even maybe try to break it down even further, the Transition Planning Commission over a long period of time, and those guys are to be commended. They spent a lot of long hours,
yes, they did.
Reviewed a lot of documents, reviewed a lot of policies, reviewed a lot of what's called best practices, looked at other mergers from across the country, whether it's corporate mergers, school mergers, or whatever, and they came up with, I think it was about 170 or so recommendations on what they thought from a community standpoint needed to happen. So when we go to the board meeting, sometimes we present those recommendations. Sometimes the recommendations are presented as they were, sometimes they're modified. But those are the recommendations. Recommendations on, you know, how to merge the two curriculums, how to save money, and just a wide array of things. And that's when people talk about the Transition Planning Commission recommendations, or TPC recommendations. That's what they're talking about.
All right, and they can be viewed online on our TSC website, which we will mention a little later on in the show. So all of this information is available online, and
it is, and I want to commend the board as I sit here because I was reviewing data today, and I think as of today, I mean, the board's been working really hard, particularly over the last few weeks, to push the ball forward. And I think the board has done about 78% of the TPC recommendations thus far.
Okay. Now, speaking of the board, sometimes people don't understand as well and want to put your legal hat on for clarification that the decisions are finalized through the board, right?
Yes.
So the Shelby County Board of Education, tell us what that makeup is and their official role.
Wow. I think that when the decision to merge was made, there was all kind of lawsuits that came out, and one of the ways to resolve the lawsuit centered around combining the boards. So, you know, the Memphis City Schools had 9 board members, the Shelby County Schools had 7 board members, and then there were 7 appointed board members for a total of 23 board members. The 7 appointed board members, those seats are now elected seats, so we still have 23 board members. Well, in September, the 9 Memphis City School Board members and the 6 Shelby County School Board members, their seats will dissolve, so there'll be 7 board members left. But there's more. The County Commission has the right to and has indicated that they will appoint 6 new board members. So in September of 2013, 13, the Shelby County Board of Education will include 13 board members. And I just want to say, I mean, I think that when people watch board meetings, there seems at times to be a lot of discord and a lot of disagreement. But I think that our board members don't necessarily get enough credit for all the hard work that they put into this. I mean, they are, we have 4, 5, 6 hour meetings 2 or 3 times a week. They have community engagements to go to, whether it's, out in North Shelby County or, Whitehaven and just throughout the whole county. So they're working extremely hard, and I think that at times it gets easy for somebody to turn on the television or read a newspaper and have a negative perception. But these people are working extremely hard, really for peanuts, and they all are working for the benefit of all of the students in Shelby County. And I think despite the differences, whether you're a board member who's in rural Millington or whether you're a board member who's in the heart of Midtown, one thing that's clear, I mean, we can all rally around and we can all agree on the fact that everybody wants what's best for kids in Shelby County. Right. We might have disagreements about how to get there, but I've not worked with anyone or been around anyone who I do not believe within their heart of hearts wants what's best for all of these children. And I think that starts with, and the board came together and passed some monumental policies the other day. I know we'll talk about around the TEI work. And it starts from the premise of every student, doesn't matter whether you're in Arlington, doesn't matter whether you're in South Memphis, doesn't matter whether you're in North Memphis, doesn't matter whether you're in Germantown, every student deserves to have a high quality teacher in every classroom from day one. That's a premise that I was so proud of the board for coming together on, really without a bunch of debate, without a bunch of discourse. It was really a matter of, we're going to take a stand. We're going to say our policies are going to reflect that we believe that every student deserves to have a high quality teacher. And I think that when they have actions like that and it's not enough focus on the positive that they're doing, it's a little disheartening. But I mean, that they're elected officials and they knew that's what they signed up for when they put their name on the ballot.
But we know they're working hard, because that's one message that rings true at every board meeting, is that it's all about the children, and they definitely do care. Yes. And for any public, anyone in the public, community members, they can look them up and see when the meetings are on scsboard.org. So information on the board members, their districts, who they represent, is all available online. And so it's nice to have that kind of transparency as well, that they know they can reach out to them.
Yes.
Another key player is the TSC, the Transition Steering Committee.
Yes.
Tell us about that group.
Well, they are a group of administrators made up of Shelby County Schools employees and Memphis City Schools employees, and they are primarily tasked with going through all of the TPC recommendations that we just talked about, and then seeing how those recommendations would fit in the merged district and recommending whether or not to move forward with those recommendations or modify those recommendations. But they are, for lack of a better word, the gatekeepers, of the recommendations, and they work with the superintendents and they work with the board and trying to take what the TPC came up with and fit it into what it would look like in the merged school district, and then making recommendations. Those guys, again, too, working very, very hard. I mean, they have gone through all these recommendations several times, looked at them from top to bottom, opened them up, shaking them out, see if there's anything else in there. But that is just an extraordinary group of administrators, again, on the Memphis City School side and the Shelby County School side.
Well, that kind of explain this. A lot of people don't understand the process and what is going on behind the scenes to make this merger happen. A lot of people would just think, we've got this school system and this school system, just put it together and keep on rolling. So kind of explain how it's not that simple.
Well, I think the biggest difference is, the strategies that are used to reach the students. I mean, if you just look at the data, the Memphis City Schools has a high concentration, what we call Title I, to break it down, poor kids. And with that, just comes so many different things. I mean, I think one of the things that touches my heart, I heard someone say the other day that oftentimes the more affluent kids, they go to school, but when you're dealing with poor kids, you have to take school to them. You got to make sure that they can see, you know, whether it's eye exams, proper medical care, you got to make sure, you know, that they get a good quality breakfast. And you don't know whether some of these kids, I've heard such horror stories, you know, a kid may have to get up in the middle of the night and go somewhere, move somewhere, alluding some violence or whatever it is. I think so when you deal with that kind of population, you have different what we call fault lines that you have to treat, you know, and you have also a much higher special needs population. So when you got one group with all these different needs that call for different strategies, you can't just take those and then make one size fit all. Conversely, if you got a more affluent group that's more grounded in the basics, you can't take the strategies that you use for them and put it within other groups. So that's the educational situation. But then you got just real life operational nuts and bolts things. For example, you know, the Memphis City Schools outsources its busing. You know, so in other words, when people see these school buses driving around with Durham on the side of it, those are the buses that transport the Memphis City Schools children. On the other hand, the Shelby County Schools, they don't outsource. So the school bus drivers work for Shelby County Schools. The school buses belong to Shelby County Schools. So you got to look at ways to take the best of both worlds, if you will, and then put them together. And then you also have, I mean, we're just being real, we're having a discussion. You have cultural, you know, differences, I think, just between the communities, whether it's the suburban community or inner city communities, and it doesn't mean one is wrong or one is right. It just means that they're different. And you know, again, I mean, I think that we spend so much time focusing on the things that are different that we miss out on the fact there's so many more things that we have in common that are different. Again, we all want to make sure that these kids have the best opportunity to succeed. We want to make sure these kids have high quality teachers. We want to make sure these kids can attain their dreams. We want to make sure these kids have better lives than we have. Nobody's going to dispute that. So when you have a few disagreements about how to do it, you know, I hate that sometimes those disagreements deafen out the fact that we have so many more things that are in common. So when you take those differences, operational, educational, philosophical, it just makes it more difficult to put it all together, you know, and as people would say, you know, when you're baking a cake, you know, it makes it different, just take all the ingredients and put it in and think something will come out. You know, you got to make sure you measure the right thing and make sure the right ingredients fit together, and we're working hard to do that.
Right. We're all working together to reach one common goal.
Absolutely.
Bottom line.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the special master.
Yes.
There's a lot of questions around that.
Yes.
Why was a special master appointed, and what is their role?
Well, I mean, you know, this merger process is being overseen by the federal court because of some things that happened, lawsuits being filed and rulings and whatnot. So the court, as the overseer of this process, you know, can't be here or be at the board or be in the TPC meetings or the TSC meetings or whatever, because of course the court has a lot of cases. So essentially, a special master is someone who, for lack of a better word, can serve as, say, the agent of the court.
Okay.
So the gentleman that the court appointed is a guy named Rick Masson, absolutely remarkable guy. Great background in business, great background in just different operations, knows the public and private sector. I've been very encouraged because I've spoken with a lot of people, corporate people, government officials, just community people, and no one has said anything but positive things about Rick Masson. So his role is going to be, well, let me back up. The court issued an order, and not to bore you with all the legalese, but his role is going to essentially be to monitor the process, the merger process, if necessary, to set deadlines for certain actions. And I think that, you know, you can't get in the court's mind, but I think that the court, you know, the court reads, I'm sure the judge probably reads the newspaper too, and I think there was a perception that the board, again, wasn't acting as quickly as it should. I think that that's probably somewhat of a misperception because you had a lot of factors going on. You know, you had a unresolved issue of whether we were going to even merge next year. The lawsuits out there, so I think that the board was acting, was proceeding out of an abundance of caution because it didn't want to make a whole bunch of decisions that may have had to be reversed if there was not going to be a merger. So I think that what you saw recently was once the court decided that we're going to merge next year, the board got very aggressive in terms of some of its decisions. They made some of the toughest decisions that they've made to date here recently. But I think regardless, the court probably wanting to make sure that we do become a merged district as of next year, consistent with that court's order, thought it was appropriate to have a special master. And when the court asked about our position on a special master, the board didn't take a position. The board, you know, the county commission, I think the city council, you know, took the position that one should be appointed. You know, the board's position was that we're working hard, we're going to continue to work hard, whether there's a special master or not. The court has appointed a special master. We welcome any insight the special master has. I mean, ultimately, I'm sure that that will help the process, and we look forward to working with them.
All right. Well, that really sums it up with the special. And there's so many questions around the special master, but you really laid it out there, and that person is there to assist.
Yes.
So,
yes.
What are some of the major decisions that have been made to date?
Well, I think, you know, one of the more difficult emotional decisions and a really huge decision was just made, and that was on the issue of outsourcing the custodial services. And I think the way the context of that is that in working through and trying to put together a budget, combine these two budgets, we've been working hard, but there's about a $65 million, I'm say it again, $65 million, one more time, $65 million budget shortfall.
Wow.
So in trying to figure out ways to close that gap, you got to make tough decisions. Not necessarily decisions that people want to make, decisions that in your heart of hearts you don't want to make. But at the end of the day, we're a school system, and what we really are about is kids. And when we make those decisions, we got to figure out ways to cut that are going to have the least impact on the classroom. So with that budget gap in mind, one of the things that the TPC recommended was that we outsource custodial services. And the TPC, under their numbers or under their analysis, projected that we'd save about $13 million if we outsource the custodial services. So we went through the process, what's called an RFP, where you essentially let people know that if you're interested in getting a contract with the district to provide the custodial services, send it to us and we're going to evaluate it. So we went through that process. At the end of the process, a vendor came to the board meeting and suggested that they could do it even for lower than they had initially submitted, and they said there was some confusion with the bid. So the board, who obviously is interested in getting the best deal possible, did two things on that day. First, they did vote to outsource the custodial services, and then second, they asked us to go back and do the RFP process again to make sure we're getting the best bid. And I think it's very, very important on this very, very sensitive issue, because you are talking about real people. Again, I'm going to be honest. I mean, people are going to lose their jobs with the Memphis City Schools as a result of this decision. But I think it's very important for people to know that we made sure that in the RFP, we told the vendors that part of this process was they needed to guarantee us that they were going to hire the custodial staff that we've had and that we love and that we've had for so long. Now, just in keeping it real, so to speak, the wages that they're going to pay are going to be lower. The health insurance benefits, actually the cost of the health insurance seems like it's actually going to be better for the employee, but I'm not exactly certain what type of benefits are offered. In this new process, we're going to get more information on that. Right. But again, it's just always trying to strike that balance. I mean, on the one hand, you know, you got this big budget deficit, you got to figure out a way to cut money. Here's a way that you can save some money. But we wanted to do it in a way that at least guaranteed that eligible employees would be able to have some job.
Would be able to find employment with that company.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, and as we just kind of unpack it and look under the hood and delve a little deeper, I mean, there are going to be more cuts. I mean, I don't, you know, I know there are a lot of rumors and people when you don't know the facts, you make facts up. And I mean, can look right at you now and tell you, I mean, a lot of decisions still have not been made and have not been finalized. But you know, one of the TPC recommendations also was to eliminate 26% of the central office staff. And I mean, that's not an outsource such that those people get a job at a lower rate. It's eliminate. I mean, that means real people, people that I know, people that I work with every day, people you know, people that all throughout this community. Those decisions are still being worked through. But I'd be less than honest if I did not say that, you know, when you're trying to close a $65 million budget gap, you know, the only real options you have are to go inside the classroom and look at some of the money you spend in instruction or people. And, you know, again, it breaks my heart. I mean, I know the board does not want to notify anybody that they're not going to have a job. But, you know, we are, at our core, you know, we are here to serve these students. And as between doing all we can to ensure that students have a high quality education, or at least the resources to have a high quality education, and protecting someone's job, you know, while we like to do that, we've got to err on the side of the students.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Hopson, for coming in and speaking honestly to the community about this merger process. There's some hard words that you had to say, but you said it and the community wants to know, and I think that they have a clearer picture and know that this is all for the children, and you are on their side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we have a lot more to talk about, so you'll be back.
I will.
That's right. All right, for more information on the merger process, visit www.mcsk12.net/TSC. Thank you for watching the Superintendent's Update. Have a great day.
The preceding was produced by the Department of Communications and Broadcast Services through the facilities of C19 and FM 88.5. Stacy Franklin, Executive Director.